So last week I was wrapping up the PRP trigger kit install on the Skyline, and I screwed up the connector here. So I was able to locate a connector, and it is actually from a 2017 Camaro. I think it's for the speed sensor. I don't know what it's actually for, but here's the Duralast part number for it. So hopefully if you guys ever get into a pinch and screw it up like I did, this is the connector that you need. Okay, so I think this guy's IAT is hooked up wrong. So according to this little diagram here, because he doesn't have the connector any longer, but according to this diagram here, B and D is, if you look, it's in the shielded wire. So B and D, B signal, D is signal ground, C is 12 volt ground, so that's basically chassis ground according to this. So I think it's, yeah, so this white wire and this harness here is actually signal ground, and so he's got it hooked up to chassis ground, it looks like. So the reason why this is important is because sensor grounds obviously need to go to sensors need to be grounded by sensor ground. But the reason why we need this though is because the crank angle sensor uses signal ground now. So the easiest way to tap it was just to go from here to here. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna strip these two ends. We're gonna keep them real long because I may have this pin backwards just because I don't have the connector. I don't know which wire is what on the connector. So there's signal and ground. So we're gonna get this flipped around real quick, strip these ends. We'll leave them extremely long, and we're just going to, again, we're just gonna strip them, attach them really shittily, and we'll test to see if it works. So this is literally 50-50, and what I'm going to do is I'm just going to wrap it around here. Then we're gonna strip the sensor ground wire off the math because that's the quickest and easiest way of doing it. And we don't have the cam hooked up yet, so, and that's fine. We don't really need that at the moment. And what I might do is just flip the wires around anyways, just so on this DT, on the DT connector, so white is white and yellow will be signal, but this will be okay for testing it for now. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna basically, I'm gonna find a 10 mil bolt to stick onto the water pump really quick because we gotta crank the motor over. I'm going to disable something, probably injectors, because that seems like the easiest thing to do. We'll disable the injectors really quick, and we're just gonna crank it over with the ECU hooked up, and we're gonna look for signal. So we're gonna look at the edges on the laptop side of it, and if it's wrong, we can actually just flip-flop it. We can either flip-flop the wires mechanically, or we can do it in the software. But like I said, for now, I'm just gonna find a 10 mil bolt, just one or two, if they're not too far away. Yep. Just so we can secure the water pump pulley, so I can crank it and test it. All we're doing is testing, that's all we're doing. We're gonna test the crank angle sensor wiring really quick, and hopefully all that is correct. And if that's good to go, we'll go ahead and we'll wire up the cam wiring, and then we will also in turn test that. And like I said, we're only doing the water pump pulley just enough so it doesn't come flying off when we crank it, and it should not start. That is the key, so we don't want it to start just yet. Okay, so those are on. I'll work on it disconnecting injectors right now. Okay, so the injectors are unplugged, and like I said, again, for the 15th time, is that we just want it to crank so we can take a look at the signal and see. So on the wiring, we still have to do the shielded wire, which is not a big deal. We can shield that. We don't need that at the moment, but the shield is important because we need it so it doesn't pick up any noise on the crank signal. I had really wished that this kit, instead of using VR sensors, was actually using HAL sensors, but it's VR for some reason. I think HAL sensors are a bit better. It's weird that their quote-unquote street kit uses a HAL, but their race kit uses a VR on the crank. I'm sure they know more about it than I do. All right, so I don't think we need any more pull-ups or pull-downs. We've got a 36-2, so it's missing 2 teeth. We're gonna enable scope, trigger angle, first trigger tooth. We don't know any of that. So 32, we're gonna leave this at, we're gonna take a guess, put this at 4. Should be falling. We've got the scope enabled. And then we're gonna go into the software. We're going to hit the scope here, and we gotta press and hold this button while we crank it. And we got nothing. So we're gonna try to hit this at rising. And we got nothing on either side, which is strange. Okay, time to check our wiring and see what's going on here, because that's not right. Okay, so there can only be a handful of things here. We could have a back connection here. So as you can see, I've depinned it just like it slid it in. I didn't have the retainer in earlier, and that might have like pushed the pins over so they're not connected. I tried flipping it in the software over between these two. That might not be it. So what we're gonna do now is we're just going to try it again. Battery's kind of low on this car, which I don't like. So we're gonna put it on the charger later on today once I get this all sorted, hopefully. The last thing it could be is that there's a shim that the sensor sits on, and it could not be shimmed correctly. So first and foremost, we're just gonna try the easiest thing here, which is going to be basically just flipping it over and making sure that we've got good wiring. I don't like that fan running. Okay, so flipping, making sure that connection is there. That's not doing anything. We're gonna flip this over to rising, which it shouldn't matter. Okay, so we got neither. So if our wiring is good, I guess it potentially could be that this is wired incorrectly. Maybe it's the wrong pin. It shouldn't be, according to the diagram. Let's see here. So according to this here, pin 2 is our signal. We know from the diagram that pin 3 is power. So that means that we're looking at it in this sense here. So 1, which is pin 2, 4, 3, 2, signal 1, which is crank, should be here. But just for funsies, I'm gonna stick it into the other connector here. And this is the important thing of why we need to test for crank first, because if you don't have crank signal, if the ECU doesn't see crank, it's never gonna look for cam because it doesn't know that the car is cranking over. That's gonna get really annoying really quick. Okay. Okay, so we have nothing there. I'm gonna go ahead and flip this over to rising just to test it. And we still got nothing. Okay, so clearly we have an issue with the sensor there. Go ahead and put this back to where it was. And so we've got it slid correctly on the pin. The shield's not hooked up, but the shield shouldn't cause that. And the connector on the bottom here was actually pre-wired from those guys. So I just literally plugged it in and then hooked up the DT. Now, according to online, this should be sensor ground, but again, we flipped it over in the software and it made no difference. I guess what we're gonna do here really quick here is we're just gonna swap pins and we'll test one more time. Okay, pins are flipped, and it could be a bad crimp as well. So that, I don't think it's a bad crimp. I did check it, but I guess you never know. Yeah, that's gonna get really annoying really fast. Okay, that's flipped. No difference. Oops. This should be 36, not 32. Not that, I don't think that would be the problem, because it should just count teeth in scope mode. Okay, no difference there. So we're gonna raise the car up and we're gonna struggle with unplugging that sensor. Hopefully we can get to it. I believe, if memory serves, it should be an Allen. Put this connector right over yonder so we don't lose it. Go ahead and grab all three of these, because I don't remember which one it is, and a 10, just in case. You guys probably can't see this, but with the alternator in its way, we definitely cannot get to the sensor. Great. I checked it off screen, but I basically ohmed out the sensor end. So now that you can see, I have the alternator kicked over to the side, but I've measured it from sensor end to my wiring ends, and the ohm's really low, like 0.2. So it's pretty decently low. So that should be good. What we're going to do now is we're just going to basically unscrew the sensor down there, and we're either going to remove the shim, or I think I might test it. I think I can test it by tapping it with a, something steel against it, because it should be a magnet. And that way we can kind of verify whether we have a good sensor or not, Here's the sensor removed. I don't see anything wrong with it. So the teeth haven't been like striking the sensor or anything like that. And here's the shim that I was talking about that they give you. So what I'm going to do now is I'm basically just going to find something that's magnetic to this, and I'm pretty sure it needs to be something steel, but we should be able to smack it in. There we go, perfect. So what we're going to do is we're going to plug it in. I'm just going to kind of do this number here, and then while doing that, I'm going to look at the ECU software to see if it picks up anything, which it should. All right, we got the key on. We've got the laptop hooked up. We've got the sensor hooked up. And so what I'm going to do, I don't know if you guys are going to be able to see this from here, but Okay, I'm not getting anything from the ECU at all. No signal whatsoever for some reason. I hate when people wire up these fans, man. They just have them running all the damn time. It's really annoying. So even with the scope running, we're actually not picking up any signal whatsoever from this. I'm gonna go ahead and move this wire to the other one just in case that what I'm finding online is wrong. Yeah, we're getting nothing on the scope. So I don't know if this sensor is bad or what, which is really strange to me. Go ahead and take off the shim so we don't lose it. But we're not getting anything at all on the scope. And normally, like on the Honda Beat, we should just be able to kind of do this number here, and it should pick up some type of signal. But as you can see, it's not doing anything at all. Strange. So I'm wondering if this is actually even signal ground. Maybe the wires are switched up somewhere along the way. Oh, this is real fun. I can feel my sciatica kicking in already. All right, so I have it tied in over there on the MAF wiring for what I think is sensor ground. Sensor ground is on the black connector, pin 29. So we're gonna have to look at this backwards. 27, 28, 29. And as you can hear, we've got it beeping. So we've confirmed two things. We've got sensor ground where it should be, one. And secondly, they actually have the IAT wired up to the wrong ground. So that's good there, I guess. Well, not really, because now we don't know what's wrong with the sensor. So off camera, after I did the continuity check here and we had continuity, I actually went back and looked at the ohm reading, and the ohm reading on sensor ground was really, really high. So I went back inside the car and I started just grabbing connectors and pushing on them. And what I actually found out was the factory, this car uses the ECU Masters plug and play adapter. And if you've ever dealt with any early Nissan stuff, you'll know that the ECU connector has a 10 mil bolt in it that causes it to cinch down. What happens is that when people go to tighten it, because the 10 mil is in the very center, it actually starts to bow the connector. So here's the 10 millimeter nut here, or bolt here. And so when people go to tighten these down, you can actually see that it causes it to bow. So if you look at this side, you see how there's like a lip here, and I can push down on it. And this side is completely flush. When you tighten this up, it causes it to bow. And so what actually fixed the problem was I just grabbed the whole harness and I just smushed it down with my thumb, and then that seemed to fix it. So there's a good chance it's time for a new harness here.